the people who came together, who stayed the course, and those who came and joined as the movement took up momentum. They were committed to the one purpose, to the one vision which was articulated or which was felt, and that is to serve the people and provide an alternate government, an alternate party to give the people a choice. I can also say that before that there were other alternate parties. CCM was not the first alternate party to the incumbent at the time. You had the PDP, which was headed by Ted Hobson. You had independent people who contested. I was linked at one time with another party, but I said no, I could not be involved because that party was too closely affiliated to people who were Labour connected. So I said no, I'm sorry. I got wrongly cussed for it. But I say that to say that the people who were there at the beginning had a sworn and steadfast purpose, and that is to serve the people and provide an alternate, good governance, good direction, with good policies and good plans for the economic development of leaders. The thing is, I laugh all the time. It sounds strange about the politics because there's one thing about human behavior. They say that you shouldn't take yourself too seriously. Even if what you do is serious, you should not take yourself too seriously because, but I laugh at some of the things. I laugh at my own episode in the house, which has gone down in infamy. Not that what I said was wrong. Don't get me wrong. But it is the forum in which it was said, and what went wrong, what the kind of actions or interactions which surrounded the whole thing, which led to the final acclamation. Right? I laugh about that because it was not intended initially to create any hurt for anybody. It was an innocent sort of okay, that is a low voice. And then I was castigated.
Madam President, I said that the Honorable Cozier, I looked at him and I said he's a jackass. Please, let me finish it.
Yes, I'm not disturbing.
Yeah? I said it because I do believe that he is, but I apologize for using this.
But I had to defend myself, and I've never been afraid to defend myself when I know I have acted in a way which does not require castigation. Now that sounds like a philosophical argument, but it is a philosophical. So I laugh about that. I also laugh about, some of the things, sometimes when we are campaigning and people get all worked up. But I think a serious time was 2011, the elections, and what transpired, what we thought went down, what we knew went down, and the decision to challenge the elections. I think it was one of those things which said, listen, you have to challenge this. You can't even be persuaded by other people that what went down was correct because it wasn't correct. Was there evidence? We think there was evidence. Because in 2006, we could have challenged as well, but we didn't have the evidence. We knew that irregularities took place, but we didn't have the hard evidence as to who created the irregularities. I'll tell you.
Noon television viewers and listeners to ZIZ Radio. My name is Via Galloway, and we are here along with Cheryl Ward, Jason Davis, and Derek Fifield will be bringing to you live coverage of the arrival of the body of the late Ambassador Vance Winkworth Amory. He is scheduled to arrive here this afternoon, in fact, anytime now, and we are bringing to you live coverage of the arrival of his body. Good afternoon, Cheryl.
Pleasant good afternoon to whoever and wherever you are watching and listening to ZIZ Radio and Television. This moment for me, although we've had quite a few such events giving live coverage to notable persons who passed, is so real Because from the time that we heard of the passing of the former premier, the ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Vance Amory, it was an abstract thought that he had passed. I think today, with the arrival of the remains, it becomes more real. For some persons, it might be the actual paying respects while the body is lying in state at government headquarters. But for some, I think the arrival of the remains today at the Wabatal Bracha International Airport, it is when, at that point, we would realize that the Honorable Ambassador is no longer with us on earth.
Jason, maybe you could set the stage, give us the background information on the late Vance Winkworth Amory. What is expected when his body arrives here?
Well, his body arrives on a British Airways flight, and he will be met with a military ceremony. I do believe his wife will be accompanying the body. As we can see, the aircraft is on arrival to the RLB International Airport. A ceremony will be underway once it touches down, and I'm sure Mr. Fifield can give us a bit more information on that ceremony in a bit. But after the ceremony, the body will be taken to government headquarters, where it will lie in state after a brief stop at the funeral home. It will lie in state for 2 days at government headquarters, as I said, where there will be viewings, separate viewings for the cabinet and then for the general public. After that, it will then be taken to Nevis, where there will be 2 days of lying in state, which will be announced at a later date. Let me go to Mr. Fifield right now. Can you tell us, what can be expected at the airport as we see the plane is touching down?
And Jason, what is expected here today for the arrival of the late Vance Amory is a platoon-size unit of about 18 men with a sergeant and a commissioned officer in charge. And they will be at the airport on the tarmac itself when the plane touches down, and they will form up the closest possible area to the plane. I think in this case, with that side of plane, they are going to form up below the wing once the plane has come to a stop. And the officer in charge will then have the men drawn up with their rifles, especially their rifles. Then they will come to a shoulder arms and then give a formal present arms when the body itself comes out of the plane. This is a respect given to anyone of his nature and that stature. It is called a quarter guard. If you visit Camp Springfield or any other military base, it is called a barrack guard. In this case, for the arrival of a late body of its nature, you get a quarter guard. So they will be there facing the plane where the body will come down, and give a present arm, and a general salute is given as the body comes out.
So is this any different, John? What's the difference between what happens here today and what happens while the body is in state and at the actual state service?
The difference is, once the body is on the ground, it is then taken over by a more seniority of the ministry of the government itself.
Okay.
In it lying state, it is the responsibility of the Ministry of National Security. Here, it is just a receiving guard.
Okay.
The military receives the body. Once the body goes into the hearse, it is then escorted by the military, the bearers especially, and that 18-man quarter guard goes to government headquarters. They are to be drawn up there again, and a general salute is given. Now, every time his body moves from here on, it is to be escorted by the military, and a salute is given every time he comes out of the dead house, as we call it, to go to lying state. That present arms is given, that respect is given. It's just a mark of respect.
Okay. And it's the highest show of respect that a country can give to a statesman.
Yes. Being the fact that he has already been given a state funeral accorded to him.
And what we're looking at right now on screen, it's a view of the tarmac of the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport. Beautiful skies in the background. And of course, I am sure that many persons would be at home or maybe lining the route or at the airport itself to view the arrival of the body of this great statesman.
And this is a regular flight to St. Kitts. It's a BA 2157 flight, comes in on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Started coming to St. Kitts last October, I think October 5th. Started coming on Thursdays and Sundays. Now it comes on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So this is a regular flight with regular passengers. So what we would see is regular passengers coming off, and then of course the military takes over and the action takes place as far as the military is concerned.
Yes, I understand that they will wait until the passengers alight the aircraft, and then after that the body will be taken from the aircraft and the military ceremony will begin.
Okay. And this is a flight that is coming from Gatwick.
Well, it went to via Antigua, yes.
It goes back to Antigua and ends up back at Gatwick. But the man himself, we've heard a lot about the Honorable Vance Amory. He's still somewhat of a mystery in that you don't hear too much about his personal life, his family, we do know that he's from Gingerland in Nevis. He was born to Hyacinth and Carlton Amory, both deceased, and if the information we're getting is right, he would be laid to rest next to his mother at the St. George's Church
In Gingerland, yes. Yes, he was a very quiet man. He was well loved by the people, as we saw in the documentary that was produced. He laughed a lot. He has this beautiful smile that persons always speak about, and persons were always eager to have a conversation with the late Vance Amory because he always had some kind of,
He was very relatable.
Right.
Very relatable and approachable because in a documentary that we did just recently, and quite a few persons on the road said that he would approach them and say, "How are you doing?" and actually listen to you, which might be something that politicians don't often seem to do. But he was somebody who would listen to you, ask you how you're doing, and actually listen to your response. So that is I think a lot of people were able to relate to him in that way and approach him on the street wherever they might have met him.
And a lot of persons expressed the fact that they were deeply saddened when they heard of his passing. And he was somebody that a lot of people looked up to, in fact. And he was very great, he was excellent, he was loved, he was selfless. And you heard all these things said about the Honorable Vance Amory. And I think that's the reason why at yesterday's ceremony in the Parliament in Nevis, the Prime Minister, he indicated that his name would be put forward to be a national hero.
This is a man who has touched a lot of people in a lot of different areas. I mean, it's remarkable. He started as a teacher, he was a banker, he was a sportsman, he was a community activist, a public servant, a politician, a premier, senior government minister. So just think of all those different portfolios that he would have held and the persons he would come into contact with in relation to those portfolios. He touched a lot of people, and I think you can see that by the tributes and the comments that people are constantly making since they heard of his passing on April 2nd.
In case you've just joined us, we are bringing to you live coverage from our studios here at ZIZ. We are bringing to you live coverage of the arrival of the body of the late Premier, the late Ambassador Vance Winkworth Amory. And many persons are now at the Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw International Airport. As we just saw, the plane just arrived. It's making its move on the tarmac, and soon it will be at a standstill, and we'll be taking a break soon just to let persons come off the aircraft, and then we'll come back later on to bring you the full coverage. But right now, Derek, let me ask a question. Let me bring you in here. Is there any special type of music that is being played at ceremonies like this?
For this arrival, no, there's no special music.
So the band wouldn't be there?
No, the band should not be there. This is just receiving of the body.
So it's going to be like a solemn occasion?
Solemn occasion. He is taken from the aircraft by military bearers, then onto the hearse and escorted away from. It's not like the arrival of a living dignitary.
Right.
It is the complete opposite. But the same respect is given to his arrival. And so what you will have is just, like I said, a quarter guard drawn up, word of command given, action taken, and the body is officially received here on the island of St. Kitts and Nevis.
I can imagine that there will be quite a few persons at the airport, apart from the military and airport staff, who would have heard that the remains would be arriving today, just to get a look, to pay their respects, just in case they might not be able to view the body while it's in state, lying in state. And I could imagine as well the moment of silence and the acknowledgement of the solemn moment that would take place once that casket is taken from the plane, as a sign of respect for, as we keep mentioning, the accomplishments and the man of his stature, as Derek put it. It's going to be quite a moment at the airport, I would imagine.
And just to read a quote from someone, they said, there are many qualities that make a great leader, but having strong beliefs, being able to stick with them through popular and unpopular times is the most important characteristic of a great leader. And they said the former Premier of Nevis, His Excellency Ambassador Vance Amory, was right on point with that great character of leadership. And that point was repeated several times yesterday in the Parliament when they paid tribute to the life of Vance Amory.
If I may piggyback on that, in fact, if I were to read a specific quote from national hero Sir Kennedy Simmons, during his tribute, he's described Premier Amory as a, quote, stalwart champion of the Nevisian people and a statesman of St. Kitts and Nevis. He said he earned the Here comes this gentleman who's the Premier of Nevis at the time, and I don't know, would I be able to get a word with him? But he was so warm and so friendly and just so open. He answered all the questions I had, explained everything clearly, and he was definitely a relatable, accessible man of the people.
And we can see Jenkins' funeral hearse. They would be transporting the body, the remains of His Excellency Vance Winkworth Amory to Jenkins' funeral home. And that would be given a police outrider, Derek, would lead?
He will be led by a police outrider. And the military, the bearers will also be in a separate vehicle. And that platoon of men will be in a separate vehicle, because they now have to drop again at the outside of Jenkins Funeral Home to give that present arms once the body comes out of the hearse once more.
So those of you who are watching or listening to radio, when you see this procession, it's going to be making its way towards Basse-Terre and ending up at Jenkins Funeral Home at Lower
Market
Street.
And Jason, maybe if you could remind the viewers and the listeners, it's going to be 10 days of mourning. I think we had a news item on last night speaking about what happened during that time.
Yes, we called the government house to find out what exactly would happen during the period of mourning, which runs from April 20, the day of the arrival of the body, until the April 30, the tentative day of the funeral, the scheduled day of the funeral. There are no hard and fast guidelines for the day of mourning, but persons were asked to use their discretion and, quote-unquote, be guided accordingly. For example, they were suggesting that if you are planning a beach bash or some sort of a fete in Gingerland, where Mr. Amory is from, you may want to reconsider holding it at a different point in time after the period.
This is a sign of respect.
Yeah, as a courtesy, right. As you said, as a sign of respect. These are not mandatory, and there's no legal regulations, as it were. It's suggestions and guidelines, and just as a courtesy for the memory and the family.
And persons who may have been wondering, these are not public holidays.
Correct.
These are just days in which that have been designated a period of mourning.
In fact, as you mentioned that there will be a half holiday next week, but it's for the primary school sports day in Nevis.
Right.
It was announced earlier today.
And there we can see the former, we can see the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Sean Richards. We can see former Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel Douglas. And I would imagine there would be some other dignitaries that would be joining them as well to receive or see the remains being taken from the aircraft and loaded into Jenkins' funeral hearse.
The Prime Minister as well, he has arrived. He'll be part of the official
That is
delegation
P3, that's there. Or the procession going into town. You know, he himself described the Honorable Vance Amory as a decent man, an honest man, level-headed, of a level-headed nature, intelligent diplomacy, strong, steady, sober leadership, strong determination and resourcefulness. And when he listed those attributes, I couldn't help but remember sometimes in Parliament, he was also almost like the peacekeeper.
Right.
He would, irrespective of which party you would belong to, whether it's government or opposition, he was always willing to give you a chance to speak your piece. And he would always be the one that would stand up and say, you know, show respect for the position, whether it's for the Prime Minister or leader of the opposition. So he was always that person who was the mediator and the peacekeeper. And you see it in on a lot of different occasions.
And as you mentioned earlier, he was many things in his lifetime. He served as a headmaster at a very young age. He was a bank manager. He made, I think, the West Indies President's 11 team, and he also captained the Leeward Islands.
And the Combined Islands, and I think
he was also a footballer, I understand.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But I heard he played for clubs in Barbados.
Right. When he was at university.
Islands. So he was a well-rounded man. Not only there we can see the Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, joining the delegation of officials to welcome his fellow countryman, his colleague, his friend,
mentor.
You know, his mentor. I think that is how the Prime Minister described him as well. So it seemed as if because of his experience in the political field, he was able to, you know, maybe offer advice and, like he said, intelligent diplomacy towards all of his colleagues in the national parliament. And he had quite a bit of experience. He had 3 successful terms as Premier of Nevis.
He was the longest serving Premier.
And I think at 43 that he started his premiership. So he was also considered at the time as the youngest in Nevis. So quite a few attributes that we can, you know, label the Honorable Vance Amory, Honorable His Excellency Vance Winkworth Amory JP, now receiving a military reception at the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport.
And to remind persons that a number of the officials at the airport, including the opposition leader, the Premier of Nevis, and of course the Deputy Prime Minister, they were all part of the persons paying tribute to the late Vance Amory. Among those in attendance as well, we had the members of the administration under Vance Winkworth Amory at that time, speaking about the relationship with him. The Honorable Jeffords, the Minister of Agriculture, he paid a stunning tribute to him and said he looked up to Vance as his father, and he actually used to call him father at times, and persons were wondering why. But it's because of the wise counsel that he was able to give to him, which brought him to the stage where he's at today. So there were many things that were said about Vance, and
over the next few days, many persons would be given other opportunities to, pay tributes. The special sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly was yesterday. That was on Tuesday, was it?
It was yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday.
Before that, you had an edition of Leadership Matters hosted by the Prime Minister that was dedicated to the memory of the Honorable His Excellency Vance Amory. So persons have been able to call in, pay their tributes, and to show their respect. And like we have been doing here today, tell of any interaction that they might have had with the Premier, and relate how approachable and how understanding he seemed to be to anybody, irrespective of your station in life.
And persons would definitely have a chance to view his body for the last time for 2 days. I think it's Thursday and Friday. In fact, on Thursday morning from 9 until 10, it's going to be cabinet members only, and then after that it will be opened up to the general public to file past his body at government headquarters. I think it would be on the second floor of government headquarters.
If I may add to that, there's actually been a slight alteration. The cabinet will be viewing from 9 to 9:30.
Oh, from 9 to 9:30.
And then after 9:30, the public was then able to view him until 3:30 on the Thursday. And then from Friday, the public can view the body from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. And as you mentioned, the body will be located on the second floor of government headquarters in the area just before the entrance to a National Assembly chambers.
We're seeing quite a few photos there of Amory out and about in Nevis. This was a man who was constantly moving and, working towards elevating himself and others in his contribution to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis.
And of course, he was a founding member of the Concerned Citizens Movement Party. He served as a member of the Nevis Island Assembly. I think it was from 1987 to 2017, member of the National Assembly, 1989 to 2020, Premier of Nevis, 1992 to 2006, and from 2013 to 2017, and Senior Minister in the Federal Government, 2015 to 2020. And before his untimely passing, he served as Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary in the office of the Prime Minister. And we're seeing the tarmac here at the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport as persons are getting in place to see the body leave the aircraft, the British Airways aircraft. And as we mentioned earlier, it is a regular flight. So persons who came in
place, you see people moving around. I imagine that they're just getting things into place so that once, the regular passengers alight from the plane, then things will go smoothly in terms of transferring the remains of His Excellency Vance Amory from the aircraft to Jenkins House.
a number of prime ministers and, of course, leaders of government and other private institutions from across the region. They took the opportunity to pay tribute to the late ambassador for being a regionalist, and always spoke about how he would like to see countries coming together, and he never really missed an opportunity to discuss regional issues with other like-minded leaders.
And the thing is, I think for some of them, it came as quite a shock, his passing, because I understand recently, as early as last month, he was attending the CARICOM Heads meeting in Belize, and we saw photos in the media with himself and Keith Mitchell, who seemed to have had a very close relationship. They were, in fact, embracing each other. So you could imagine how the news of Amory's passing would have impacted him. You had Mia Martley of Barbados, who also was at that meeting, and shared her condolences to the family colleagues and friends and fellow Kittitians and divisions on the passing of His Excellency?
It was really a shock because many persons heard about it very early on the Saturday morning. Some were in disbelief, was wondering if it was just a rumor or whatever, but it started to sink in, and the tribute started to come in for the late Vance Winkworth Amory. He was fond of the ferry terminal. He traveled between St. Kitts and Nevis ever so often, so persons down there heard the gossiping and that sort of thing, whether it is true or not. And they just saw him a few days ago, or they spoke with him a few weeks ago, and this can't happen. But you can't question it, It's death, but it's still life.
And you think that a man of his intelligence at some point would have made peace with himself and his destiny, so to speak, and would want us to celebrate. And you hear this so often. It sounds cliche, but sometimes I think it's an appropriate description, because this man has contributed so much to St. Kitts and Nevis. He has left a legacy that is unbelievable. So there's so much that he has given us for us to be thankful for. You talk about some of his accomplishments, the expansion and the upgrading of the Newcastle Airport to the Vance International Airport. You talk about the Performing Arts Center in Nevis that now exists in Nevis. He apparently was instrumental in securing funding for that building. You talk about the expansion of the upgrading of the Bayfront. Nevis is such a beautiful site when you're getting off the ferry in Nevis. Mm-hmm. The whole front of the area was just renovated and upgraded, and all of this was said to have happened under the premiership of the Honorable Vance Amory.
He was also known for some key legislation as well in the Ministry of Labor. He was responsible for the Ministry of Labor at that time. And I think the long service gratuity that was passed, I think it was back in 2013, he was responsible for making sure that came true. So there are a number of things that he'll be remembered for. His legacy will continue to live on.
I think the Prime Minister also mentioned an asphalt, the commissioning of an asphalt company that would make repairing roads in Nevis a lot cheaper. So that has to have been a significant development, because roads these days are so easily in disrepair, and so to have a means of repairing them in a cheaper manner would have been something that the Treasury in Nevis would have been thankful for.
Of course.
So there's so many things that we have to be thankful for. So instead of condolences and feeling in a dark place, we really have a lot to celebrate when it comes to what he has left us with, his legacy.
And Derek, maybe you could come in here. What are we seeing right now?
This is the platoon, the quarter guard, join up and readying themselves to take position beneath the aircraft for the body when it leaves the airplane there. As we can see, it's a group of 18 infantrymen commanded by an officer from the Coast Guard unit carrying the platoon itself. Mm-hmm. And men in green are from the St. Kitts Defense Force infantry, and the officer, like I said, is from the St. Kitts Defense Force Coast Guard. I think his name is Daniel, if I'm not too certain, and it should be comprising of 18 men, one senior NCO, a sergeant, and a lieutenant that makes up this quarter guard here today.
So they would now be standing there and then actually go closer to the aircraft?
Yes, they will stay here where they are presently and await further instruction for them to march towards the aircraft and closer to the aircraft. Then aligning themselves, facing the hatch or the door in which that coffin should come out, or the casket, sorry. Now, we may or may not see the actual casket coming down from the plane. Normally, it will come in an aircraft-approved container. The Ministry of Health and Customs should inspect it first before handing it over to the bearers.
At which point it would be our national flag.
Should drape that
drape the casket.
Yes.
I see there's a second group of officers here.
These are the bearers.
Okay.
Who we're looking at now with the bearers comprising of the Royal St. Christopher Nevis police officers and members of the St. Kitts Nevis Defence Force.
Derek, as a member of a former member, but you're still a member of the St. Kitts Nevis Defence Force, no matter what you say. What is the feeling like when your name come out in an order to say that you will be on parade or you will be
selected?
Right, how person selected? Do you look for your best men? And what is the feeling like?
In the nature of this one,
yes.
You're selected one on seniority, two heights. If you can look there closely, they're almost the same height. And in His Excellency's case, you do not use anyone less than the commissioned officer or a gazetted officer. So you are selected by your rank and your height. If you're the short officer, I'm sorry, there's no disrespect to people with challenge, but because of the fact that this casket will be carried shoulder height, then everyone should have the same height to cause a balanced carrying of that casket. So you are selected on those things. Height, strength is a must. You should be strong. Your rank, depending on who you are bearing, and in His Excellency's case, is commissioned officers only will carry his body. If in the case of somebody less, like a military officer who is lesser rank, you will get lesser ranks doing that. But in the case of His Excellency Amory, he will have commissioned officers, and from the police force, we call them gazetted officers.
And Vale's the second part of his question, what is the feeling like when you were selected to attend an event of this stature?
Adrenaline rush, number one. At the same time, it's not a parade that you want to go and show off because it's a somber moment. I use the word show off because that's what I did. I'm sorry. That's the only way you can kill your butterflies, by showing off.
Right.
But in a case of this way, you're proud. You happy to be there. Not happy for the moment, but you feel a sense of joy that you can render such a service to a man of this nature. And this goes down on your record.
You feel honored.
You feel honored. And being there is an honor. It's a sad occasion being there. So it's.
And as we mentioned before, His Excellency would be buried next to his mother at the St. George's Anglican Cemetery.
And I am sure that the people of Nevis will turn out in their numbers to pay their final respect to the late Premier Vance Amory.
I would not be surprised if the extra ferry trips being made to Nevis because, St. Kitts and Nevis, a federation. What belongs to Nevis belongs to St. Kitts as well. So I imagine that there are going to be quite a few persons who would want to attend the funeral service and maybe even get a second peek, pay their respects for a second time while the body is lying in state and to attend the service on Saturday.
So it's 10 days of mourning, as we heard, starting today until the end of the month.
Until the 30th, Saturday the 30th of April. Not public holidays, just a period that was selected as a period of mourning. And we can see
the Commissioner of Police in the front.
Commissioner of Police, the Prime Minister,
other senior police officers, the Prime Minister as well.
We can see, is the Deputy Prime Minister there?
Yes, the Deputy Prime Minister will be part of the
we can
welcoming party.
And earlier we saw the Premier, the Honorable Mark Brantley.
And Leader of the Opposition, right? There they are now.
Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Denzel Douglas. So it's quite a large number of colleagues, officials waiting to pay their respects for the first time to His Excellency Vance Winkworth Amory. It's such a beautiful day. Look at that. Look at the skies.
Yeah, not a cloud in the sky.
Scenery is captivating. I'm sure that many persons overseas
It's a
who are
celebration.
looking at the ceremony at this time, those are some of the things they're saying. Wow,
It's a
St. Kitts is beautiful.
It's a
Like we don't know.
It's our weather is opening its arms to embrace His Excellency and welcome him back home, his place of rest, his place of peace, as we pay our respects to his memory, his legacy, and remember his accomplishments and his service to country.
Yes. And of course, many persons will be making sure that they are a part of his legacy by at least paying their respects to him in some form or the other. And it's something that St. Kitts and Nevis, we really pay respect to our heroes. And of course, as we heard earlier, he could be one of the sixth national hero.
So you can see the officials are lined up there, Derek. You can see some cones, so that is an indication of where the hearse would pass, maybe?
The body, the hearse will probably stay at the end of that line.
Oh, okay, so the casket
Will
be
pass, yes.
Will be carried along that route.
Along that route, yes. But the hearse will stay beyond there, and the bearers will carry the casket
To the
towards
hearse.
the hearse, yes.
And the photographers are all in place, making sure that they capture the moment for prosperity.
We can see the Honorable Lindsay Grant. We can see the Honorable Akila Byron. So there are quite a few government ministers.
I think I saw the Honorable John Powell there as well.
Yeah, the cabinet of ministers are most of them, may I say.
Here,
Isn't it?
this is the casket
This is the casket now,
Yeah.
coming
being taken out of the aircraft.
It's really a solemn moment just looking at the coffin, and I'm sure persons looking at this, are grieving to know that a man who they loved so much over the years is now back on soil, St. Kitts and Nevis soil.
And he's now at peace. I would
Right,
imagine
right.
he is at peace to be home. Making sure that everything is done so that the casket is handled and dressed in a dignified manner.
Okay. So they'll lift it here, be lowered and then
They'll be lowered
lowered, then lift.
and lift.
Okay. And you said the pallbearers are made up of senior officers?
Senior officers from both Royal St. Kitts and Nevis Police Force and the St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force. All commissioned and gazetted officers.
And the sudden passing has shocked and shaken the entire population, not only here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the entire Caribbean, government officials as well. You have past and present cricketers, clergy members of various churches, the Anglican Church, which he was a key member as well, and other religious bodies. And of course, they'll be comforted by some good memories growing up around the late Vance Winkworth Amory. And now the coffin is being brought forward.
Oh. That was quick.
Carefully being taken from the platform and now onto the tarmac.
Advancing forward at this time.
I know sometimes when you have the military involved, you have a quick march, or there's none of that.
No, not today.
I was about to ask if there are any other elements like a gun salute or...
No, not today. That is all on funeral day. This is just receiving, having a receiving guard, hence no salutes of any nature by gun will be given here today. At this event, however, as we can see, the casket is carried waist height, as we call it. However, on the funeral day, it will be carried shoulder height. So they are going to carry it here now at waist height, and then on that day, it will go shoulder height.
Is there any reason for the distinction?
Because the official funeral has not yet started, they carry it this way. And it's because it's a receiving guard. The casket is being received for the first time. Hence, there's no surety of what condition it is in to take it up to your shoulder.
Okay.
So when all the inspection is done at the funeral home and the all clear is given, it is safe and what so, you then put it up.
Is there a particular number of pallbearers that are selected?
You can do 6 to 8,
Okay.
depending on the size and of course the weight. Normally you go with 8 for surety.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, because I know those coffins are not light. I've had to be a pallbearer before, and it's
Yes.
quite
So you would
heavy.
have here now you are 8 pallbearers and an officer in charge of the pallbearers. He gives the commands.
Once the hearse leaves the airport, the military would follow to, the pallbearers would follow to then take the casket into the funeral home?
Into the funeral home.
So from this point onwards, whenever the body is going to be moved, the military will be involved.
Yes. It is the responsibility of the military to bear this casket as of now to the funeral home, from the funeral home to government headquarters, from government headquarters back to the funeral home for the 2 days, and then accompany it over to Nevis, hand it over to the funeral home there, take it from the funeral home in Nevis to the courthouse.
These same pallbearers, or will there be others in
Same
Nevis?
pallbearers. Same pallbearers are going to be responsible all the way.
It's a beautiful overhead shot of what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport Jenkins funeral hearse with the 4 flags of St. Kitts and Nevis, and the casket of His Excellency Vance, Winkworth, Amory, also draped in the national flag of St. Kitts and Nevis. You can see the police vehicle in front, and I think there's a motorcycle outrider.
An outrider, yes.
And would there be anything behind the hearse, or that's
The
it?
pallbearers and the 18-man quarter guard
Would drive.
along in the same position.
So
Going
those
down.
persons who came, like the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, they won't be
part of
traveling
the
behind?
procession.
Not at this
Not
time,
necessarily.
no, not necessarily.
And what about when it's on its route down to the funeral home? Is there, what should I say, with vehicles on the road parked on the side for the body to pass, or it's normal traffic?
Where I just to interrupt there a bit, I can see somebody being consoled. I think that might be his wife, Vernie Amory, is it? She was to have, from our understanding, she was to have accompanied
With the body,
the
yes.
casket from England to St. Kitts. So you can see she walking down the line with officials and acknowledging their presence and perhaps thanking them for showing their support. Like we said, it's a moment of acknowledgement. It's a moment of the seriousness of the moment, and condolences, I would imagine, are being paid to her as well as the extended family.
And she's being escorted by a member of the St. Kitts Nevis Defense Force, it looks like to me. A female officer?
Yes, she has an officer assigned to her.
Right.
And we see she's been escorted to a vehicle as we still await the procession leaving. I guess, yes, she's been escorted to a vehicle and likely would form part of the procession?
Yes, she would. Whatever is afforded to him is now afforded
By extension.
to her. By extension, yes.
So, to revisit Veer's question, once the procession is underway, would traffic be diverted or blocked, or
Yes,
what's
traffic at the area of the funeral home? There should have been an area created for this event this afternoon. Once they are going en route, then traffic will have to make way for this procession to come through.
and I guess that will be the purpose of the outrider going
That's
ahead
the
as
purpose
well.
of the outrider, yes.
We can see the officer is now getting into his vehicle. Might be an indication that pretty soon the procession will leave the Robert L. Barcher International Airport, make its way into Bastille and to Jenkins Funeral Home at Lower Market Street. And as we mentioned before, tomorrow persons would be given the opportunity to pay their last respects and view the body of His Excellency Vance Amory. As Jason mentioned, there would also be a book
Yes.
where you can record your condolences to the immediate family, extended family at that time. And then there's another viewing on Friday from 9 to 3. That's going to be a public viewing. The Parliament will be viewing from 9 to 9:30 tomorrow, I think. Yes. So everything is being organized in a way that would give everyone an opportunity to show their respect and to bid farewell to the late His Excellency Vance Amory, former Premier and Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary.
And while serving as the Minister of Social Security from 2015 to 2020, one of the decisions he made included the implementation of the COVID-19 relief fund. He had much to do with it, that provided some sort of relief or financial support to insured persons whose income were affected by the pandemic. So there will be a number of things that persons will remember him for. Although it was a collective decision, I think with him being the minister, he initiated all of that.
It's all live coverage of the military reception of His Excellency Vance Amory at the Robert L. Barcher International Airport, and the procession is about to leave the airport and make its way to the funeral home, Jenkins Funeral Home, where the body would be until tomorrow, when the remains would lie in state at government headquarters for viewing. That's tomorrow, Thursday, and on Friday.
And there'll be an extra week and a few days for the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and persons involved in the planning of the funeral to get things organized for Saturday, the proposed date for the burial. So all the planning and so will be going towards that after today's military reception.
Vance Amory, the politician, the leader, premier, senior minister, and ambassador extraordinary in the office of the prime minister. There's so many labels that this man had: banker, teacher, altar boy. He started as an altar boy and then became a lay reader at the Anglican Church, was a devout Christian man of God, a patriot, a community activist, public servant. And so we are all welcoming the opportunity to pay our respects and bid farewell. Bid farewell.
And the procession is getting ready to leave the tarmac of the RLB International Airport, and I'm sure it will be making its way down to the route will be down Wellington Road, across the police station, I expect, and straight down to the funeral home on Market Street. So I guess persons maybe looking at it now would want to go downtown to get a glimpse of the procession with the body of the late Premier.
You know, Jason, if I could sing, I would say I would be singing "He's Home, Welcome Home."
Yeah.
I could imagine it's a relief, perhaps for his wife who accompanied him to be on home soil, and to acknowledge a part of that journey. I would imagine from the time it took place, his passing, she was just anxious to get him home and be home.
I can imagine. Funeral arrangements. Well, the death of a loved one is never easy. And then once you have to involve the procedure, the funeral procedures, life is turned upside down. And then couple that with the emotional distress, I sympathize greatly with her and the remainder of his family.
The airport, it seems like everything at the airport might be at a standstill at this point for the procession to leave.
And as it is a regular flight, I think they have to...
The flight stays on the tarmac, what, an hour and a half, I think, before it turns around?
I believe so.
So there's no delay.
90 minutes.
There's no delay of the flight in the meantime. I imagine the passengers over there, there's no embarking of the passengers at the moment, but I would imagine that this would be a sight for anyone to enjoy just while you're waiting. But we can see the procession has started slowly. Everyone is standing around and getting their last glimpse. Not of the casket per se, but just, of the procession and just acknowledging the moment. I imagine that persons would go home and tell their family members, I was at work when the casket came in. And so it's something that would be in their memory for a while.
Honorable Vance, Amory, an honorable man indeed, a statesman, very cool, very calm and collective, and some may say he had a big heart and a beautiful smile.
Humble man,
Right.
an honest man, a steadfast man, intelligent diplomat. So many descriptions that you can give him. So many ways that he has contributed to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis, economically, socially, culturally, with the Performing Arts Center. So.
As you mentioned his contribution, I was reading something online speaking specifically to his time at National Bank, where he served as manager between 1981 and 83. Apparently the bank was relatively new on Nevis and had its early difficulties. Persons didn't exactly, were very cautious of doing business with the new institution. So he went out of his way to try to change people's minds about doing business with the bank, and aided several persons in obtaining what was described as well-needed financing. And thereafter, the bank experienced healthy financial growth due to his,
You think at that point he got a inkling of his desire to be a politician?
Maybe.
Well, when the former premier, Mr. Parry, when he was giving his tribute, he said there was never an indication, because they used to, like when they have public meetings in the square, that time it was Premier Bradshaw, and in the park, he would tell him, well, let us go in and say, no, I don't have any interest in that sort of thing.
Perhaps it might have been when he became the financial secretary, because at that time, from a banker to a financial secretary, and then he saw he saw a way that he can perhaps give back to the country by economically developing the St. Kitts and Nevis. You can see an aerial view there of the airport, the parking lot. We lost the procession.
In 1967, Ambassador Amory, he entered the world of work as a teacher, I understand, at the Charlestown Secondary School. About 2 to 3 years later, he journeyed to Barbados to pursue his bachelorette studies in economics and history at the University of the West Indies, and he began his political career in 1983, as you said, while working in the finance department of the Nevis Island administration.
Under the premiership of Syrian Daniel, so that is where his political desire might have been cultivated.
And he went to serve as Nevis's second premier for 2 terms between 1992 and 2006, and from 2013 to 2017.
And then he saw the need for another political party in Nevis with the forming of the CCM, Concerned Citizens Movement, and won election, went on to win the election, and was premier for 3 terms, 3 successful terms in Nevis between 1992 and 2006, and 2013 and 2017. And he handed over the premiership to the Honorable Mark Brantley, 2017. And Mark Brantley, who was at the time his political partner.
And during the tribute as well, the Honorable Alexis Jeffords, he made it clear that because there was a big rumor saying that he was pushed out of the leadership of the party to accommodate the Premier, Mark Brantley, and he made it clear that in his conversation with Vance Amory, he said that he was tired and they must, look forward to maybe in 2 years to a new leader. But he wasn't,
And you get the sense that it was a very cordial relationship between both men, the Honorable Brantley and His Excellency Amory. So, you got no inkling of any tension or any bad
blood
feeling or bad blood between
it was
both
cordial.
of them.
The handover was quite cordial.
Being the man that Vance Amory was, you can see him thinking of the need to hand it to the next generation for them to continue. Having perhaps realized that he had gone as far as he wanted to go and had given so many years to public service that it was time for him to perhaps take a back seat. Although a back seat, that might not be the best description. As a senior minister in the ministry of the Prime Minister, you and an ambassador, you were just as active politically as you would have been as a minister of government.
We see here now the procession heading from the airport. It's now in the area of the telephone company.
And it's a smooth drive.
And the roads were recently resurfaced. So it's a smooth drive for the late Vance Amory. And they are now leaving the area of the factory. And traffic is still flowing
in the opposite direction, because as you would realize, there no, as Derek suggested, all vehicular traffic has been cleared going into Bastia. I would imagine persons who are looking at the television would be going out and seeing when it's passing their area. But there are 4 vehicles. A vehicle with the Jenkins funeral hearse with the casket of the late Vance Amory. His wife, I think, is in another vehicle. The pallbearers is in another vehicle. The ministers of government have ended their tribute to him at that point at the airport, perhaps, and would have their private viewing of the body and an opportunity for a final farewell tomorrow.
And Derek, if I could bring you in here, what does it take to prepare for a state funeral in terms of the military side of it? Would it be joint, the police and the army? What is made up of that?
Being a state funeral is
Yes.
joint. The military, however, takes command of the funeral itself in terms of drills and the band and stuff. But it is a joint effort between both forces. In preparing something like this, like you said earlier, you would have seen them on the parade square just across from ZIZ, going through basic foot and weapon drills. Like I said earlier, the military do not do funeral drills every day, every week. So when the occasion arises, then you first select the members who are going to make up this party to include a leading detachment. That is the first set of military personnel leading a state funeral. They're called the leading detachment. Then you will have the band, of course, start practicing the funeral hymns.
And who would select the hymns? Would it be the church?
There are some standard hymns for military march, and the church and the family members may indicate one or two of his favorite. Then, so the band will get mobilized, rehearsing those music. Then you will select a firing party to consist of both military and police, up to a maximum number of 12. Those are the ones who, like Jason Axe, will be firing the guns on that day at the gravesite. Then you will have mourners in uniform. That makes up those other military cadet, especially fire, SCASPA, those uniform bodies. Then at the end of that procession, you will have a rear detachment make up of the police themselves. So you'll have a leading detachment, the military, infantry, a rear detachment, the police. So those two detachments conform the military aspect of the funeral. After that, you have regular mourners and everybody else bringing up the rear. So to prepare for this, you have to start the selection of men and the rehearsal of the drills, present, rest on your arms, reverse arms, and stuff of that nature.
And there we see now, we are on Keon Street, and in West.
What I realize is that the stoplights, it's a straight through for the procession. So they've been programmed to temporarily stop.
Accommodate the procession. And now just passing the Anglican Church, heading towards the College Street Gut, and then it will be down Market Street to the funeral home, where the body will be prepared for the viewing on Thursday and Friday in St. Kitts.
And just a reminder of the times on Thursday, there will be a private viewing by the members of Cabinet, the National Hero, and other specified dignitaries from 9 a.m. until 9:30 on Thursday. And then the public will be allowed to view from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. On Friday, public viewing will take place from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at government headquarters. The casket will be located on the second floor, just outside National Assembly chambers. And there will also be a book of condolence at the entrance to government headquarters that you can sign and offer your respects, offer your sympathies.
We can see the hearse now making its way just in front of Jenkins Funeral Home. And getting into the reserved spot, as Derek indicated. and the caskets would be taken into the funeral home for its first night in St. Kitts.
You're looking at the live coverage from ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation of the arrival of the body of the late Premier, the late Ambassador Vance Winkworth Amory. It arrived here about half an hour to 45 minutes ago, where we had the short ceremony to receive the body at the airport. We are now at the funeral home on Market Street. Headdress removed, and they'll go through the process again, Derek.
Yes, of removing the casket from the hearse and taking it into the funeral home. Like I said earlier, the same bearers are going to be responsible from today until
The state
the
service.
state service on Saturday, 30th.
Small crowd gathered, of course, on Market Street in the vicinity of the funeral home to and get a look at the body arriving.
8 pallbearers to take the casket into the funeral home. And while it's in state, the flag would still be draped around.
No, once it lays state, the flag comes off.
Okay. The pallbearers being given instructions, you can see.
They are now given the command to outward turn, hence the casket is carried feet first into
Okay.
the dead house. When carrying a body, it's always travel feet.
Feet first.
Oh, okay. I learned something new.
Well, we are coming to the end of our live coverage of
First
the
segment of live coverage.
yes, the first segment, because of course ZIZ will be there live to bring you the state funeral as well.
The line in state tomorrow.
Right, for 2 days, but I'm going ahead to the funeral.
Okay. But we'll be bringing viewers just to look at what's happening tomorrow while the cabinet ministers are paying their respects as the body lie in state at government headquarters just on that first day in St. Kitts. And then we go to the state funeral in Nevis.
And I'm sure for persons who did not get to see the ceremony this afternoon, Cheryl, it will be rebroadcast later.
And
Yes.
it's available on our social media pages and on our YouTube channel.
We are coming to you live on ZIZ Radio and ZIZ Television, Channel 5. Now you can see the pallbearers coming back out. Their job for the day is done, but by no means is it complete.
No, it's not. At this point, the body is now in the hands of the undertakers. And the pallbearers will return tomorrow morning to move it from the funeral home to government headquarters. Tomorrow especially, it will be one of their most challenging lift to
Why?
get it up the steps of
Oh,
government
okay,
headquarters.
Right.
And
Because
being-
normally it's on the first floor.
no, it has never been. Been there before, it is a challenge. We all know how the steps of government headquarters
Yeah, they
is designed
Yes, yes.
with a circular.
Or maybe I'm thinking about Sebastian at government house.
Right, he was at government house.
Okay, so it was a clean walk-in, walk-out,
That was
first
a walk-
level.
That was a walk in the park.
Yeah.
These gentlemen have a challenge starting tomorrow to take that body to the second floor of government headquarters. But it is their duty to do so and do it with pride.
Any final words from you, Jason?
Well, this is definitely a momentous occasion, definitely memorable, particularly since I have personal memories of interaction with His Excellency, and like many others, I remember him as a very pleasant, accessible, warm, good-natured man. And as you mentioned before, when I first heard of his death, I couldn't believe it. It took a while for it to sink in. But, other persons called and confirmed, so it's one of the realities. Just all we can do is to enjoy every moment, for we never know when it'll be our last.
Sharon?
Like Jason, I would end with just remembering a personal interaction with him. As most Kittians do, we have family in Nevis, so I traveled over to Nevis, and on the pay I heard my name, Cheryl Ward, in his very distinctive voice. And I looked around, and there he was, and he said, good job. And I was starstruck, because, here was the premier speaking to me. And only then I can, or maybe now I can appreciate the way that he is being described by persons as being humble, being approachable, being a very understanding, and a man who seems to be dedicated to humanitarian work and dedicated to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis, and to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I was very pleased for his compliment, and I've always remembered him in that instance when he approached me and spoke to me as if I was on his level. But so I was appreciative, and I am humbled to be here today to be able to bring live coverage of the arrival of his casket, and I would definitely be back here tomorrow as we once again bring live coverage of what's happening at government headquarters as he lie in state.
And as the saying goes, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted. And we have lost a great leader and a good man. We want to thank the technical team, John James, Bevan, the entire Brimstone production crew. We want to thank Derek for coming and sharing the stage here with us, and Jason and Cheryl, of course. So once again, we'd like to invite you to stay tuned to ZIZ Radio and TV as we continue to bring you live the coverage of not the death, but the ceremony to the state funeral and the laying in state of the body. Tune into ZIZ as we bring you coverage. Once again, thank you for viewing and listening.
Well, clearly I have to thank the people who have been there supporting the party and who have given their own commitment and made their own sacrifices. I think there are so many, right? I said I've committed myself one of these days to talk, and because remember, so when you talk of people who were part of the party initially, we talk of Cabo, we talk of Dr. Leiber, we miss out Frank Bartlett. Frank Bartlett was one of our executive members, the early part of the initiation or commencement of things. And you think there's Frank was there. One of the first documents we put out had Frank's picture on it, right? So there are a lot of people like that. I mean, we talk of Malcolm, we talk of Trevor Chapman, we talk of Franklin Brown, we talk of people like Carlisle, Jefferson, and so on. But there's so many people. But institution-wise, organizations, because I've been a churchman, I think the church has kept me grounded. One, I mean, I had firm grounding in the church, I think. And I want to thank Canon Blunt for giving me the kind of home when my mother left me here as a boy of 14 years to a home in which I could grow, I could develop, I could read and take education seriously. The school system helped me, and I had a headmaster or a teacher, Mr. Merville Curtin, someone whom I don't think has gotten the kind of credit for what he did for education, secondary education. He came as a young man from Barbados, worked in education and sports at the Charleston Secondary School for years. And he was one of those teachers, among others, who took the time to encourage me to do things that he thought I needed to do. In education, he taught me how to do timetabling when you had to do timetabling by hand. And there was no computer to help you to do those things. He sat me down in terms of how do you engage with classes. So develop what he thought was some character. I said you had other teachers, but I singled him out because I remember him saying to me many years, do not stand on ceremony. You don't have to prove to people. You don't have to stand and say because you are this or that, you lord it over people. You have to respect people for whatever they are, whoever they are. The church, the school. And when he was sent to Gingerland to be the headmaster there, to create the Gingerland High School, to elevate it from the senior school, which it was, when I went to work with him, part-time initially because I was full-time at Charlestown, he gave me the encouragement, gave me the opportunity to grow whatever he thought was some leadership. And I'll say this maybe for the last, because in 1976, when he took sick in January, the first day of the school year, or the school term, 76, 76, sorry. He sent me a bunch of keys. He's gone to the hospital. That's all I got, nothing more. Sent me the keys. He didn't send to anybody else. Sent me the keys. Well, it could be because I lived down the road. I remember Pop bringing the keys and said, Mr. Cotton sent me saying he gone to hospital. It meant for that, those 2 terms, I had to run the school. But because of the guidance which he had given, it was not a burden. It was tough. We had somebody like Julie Hendrickson as a senior teacher, and we worked together very closely. But it was challenging for us. And I don't remember an education officer ever coming to the school to find out what was happening. But he said, listen, you have the keys. I don't remember other than saying to the education department that Mr. Curtin was sick. Nobody ever came for the 2 terms, January to the end of the term. At the end of the following year, for the end of the school year, Mrs. Andrew became head of the school, September 1976. But it is also good that they never came, because they never asked me, or I never asked him if I was going to get an increment to act. I was never appointed acting, I just acted. Well, he said, de facto. De facto, because somebody had to run the school. So that was my lot, right? But he played a strong role in my life. There was also another teacher, Curtin, who had to, deal with some issues. When I was being told you have to get home, not by Father Blunt, but another priest who had come temporarily. So I have to come home, I can't be involved in cricket and athletics and so on. And he wrote, they have evidence in somewhere in the school, very strong letters, no, you cannot have this young man being brought up as a sister, because I was an active person, wanted to play cricket, wanted to run, and he said no, he will remain after school to do these things. So those are some of the areas. I said AYPA, never a member, but an associate. Scouts, Boys Brigade. The Boys Brigade made a very big impact on the old priest, Father Hall, who was there, who was at 80, took up the parish of St. James. I went to live with him because he was 80 years old. He needed some, and I came with him from St. George's. And the Boys Brigade group, some of the guys like Tad, Lescott, Pink Wallace, and those guys of that era were some of the guys whom we had in the group. And the discipline which was instilled then, I think is still among them and in myself certainly. So those are the areas.